All right.
To you guys, thank you.
Thanks, Frankie.
I'm an addict in recovery. My name is Jimmy. And I'm grateful to God and the program of Narcotics Anonymous. And I want to thank so many of my friends here for the invitation to come out and say thank you. You know, that's really what this is for me. Anytime I get a chance to be of service to Narcotics Anonymous and to share my experience, my strength, and my hope is an opportunity. And it's an opportunity to say thank you. I stand on the shoulders of many men and women that came before me, so many people that paved the way, that worked the steps, that stayed here when addiction wasn't so accepted by society. It wasn't the new black like on the new television shows you see. NA is cool now, you know what I mean? It wasn't cool at one time. So I'm grateful, you know, I'm truly grateful. And I wouldn't be here had it not been for the hospitality, you know, of Russell and Tosca and Frankie and everybody that's been so kind over the years. You know, I got so many friends I see in the room, I want to stop sharing and go hug you guys, you know. I got friends here. And I'm very excited, you know, and I'm excited that, you know, even though this literature hasn't been out that long, it's mature, it's opened a lot of things up for me. It's given me some peace, some comfort. You know, the Living Clean book has attached itself to my heart in a way that has brought comfort. And you know, one of the things that I read that I've been, you know, that kind of has stayed close to me is the chapter on growing pains. Raymond's like, what are we going to share about? What part are we going to talk about? You know, I always pray and I always think, you know, well, God's going to lead me to where I need to share about. And you know, this particular chapter is something I have experience with, you know. A lot of growing pains as a member. My clean date is the 12th of December, 1995, right? So I've been clean 18 years. For a lot of you that don't know me, I got clean in Hollywood, California, in the United States of America. I got clean in a little church, a little Methodist church on the corner of Fountain and Fairfax. It was a church, a room that looked similar to this, a little smaller. There was some chairs, and I walked in and I was broken. I mean, I was broken. I had, you know, come to the end of, at the end of the road, as our literature talks about, where we can no longer function, you know, as human beings, either with or without the drugs. And I faced the same dilemma as all of us, either go on to the bitter ends, jails, institutions, or death, or find a new way to live. And so I've stayed clean long enough to experience some history. And the history I'm talking about is I've been able to experience the Step Working Guide coming out that wasn't here when I got here. I got to experience this particular book, The Journey Continues, you know, as a part of our new literature. The Miracle Happens book that goes a little bit into the history of Narcotics Anonymous and some of the members that were here in the early days. And so, you know, I'm grateful for all of that stuff that, you know, addicts took time out of their lives, that they put together through the literature subcommittee. And you know, and this is something that I think we were hungry for as a fellowship. Because a lot of us had a lot of theories, and especially those members that came before me. You know, I got clean in a region where Narcotics Anonymous began. So there's a lot of clean time, a lot of wealth and experience there. You know, a lot of strength, a lot of hope. And a lot of our members are dying. Not necessarily from addiction, but because they're getting older. They're dying, and they're dying with a thing that I call keeping the promise. They died clean. They stayed the course. You know, they had to. You know, just you know, a lot of stuff happens. You know, we put a lot of stress on our bodies, and a lot of them have health issues. And you know, even my own experience with certain health issues as I get older and as I've gained weight. And you know, they talk about that, and here's not something I want to talk about. You know, high blood pressure and all that stuff. You don't want to talk about that. I want to put on the mask. Everything's fine. Everything's wonderful. You know, but in this particular piece of literature, they talk about that. They address smoking. They address different, you know, eating habits. They talk about, you know, having a relationship with ourselves. You know, and that was stuff that you know, we would always talk about before, but not really in literature form. You know, we would share. You know, somebody might share about it in a meeting. But this particular thing is something that we can actually put our hands on and put our fingers on and put our hearts on and read and talk and share experience. It opens up a dialogue. But one of the things that I loved about Growing Pains, right, is it talks about, one of the things that stood out to me is it talked about grace. Small little word, because I'm here because of God's grace and mercy. You know, I'm standing before you in answered prayer. You know, for me, it began with the moment of silence. It began with the prayer that my mother prayed, my father prayed. Even when I didn't have enough sense to pray for myself, there was people in my life that prayed for me. And they had relationships with their own higher power. And I'm grateful for those prayers because I am someone's answered prayer. And so, you know, it talks about through hard work and grace, we keep coming back and we do get free. And, you know, grace for me is that it's something that, you know, I don't deserve it. You know, grace is something, it's a gift from a higher power, you know, and mercy is like not receiving something that I do deserve. And so I'm appreciative of the grace, and, you know, and it talks about the things that have come to, things in life that maybe I've never come to terms with before. Things happen in life that I've never come across. And all of a sudden I'm standing there, you know, what do you do with this? You know, what happens now? I don't hear this talked about in meetings, or I don't hear anybody sharing about that. And so it puts this in a format which I can understand, and it comforts my heart, right? It says, eventually, right, all of us come to an emotional crisis in our recovery. And I've come to several emotional crises in my recovery over the last 18 years. Some of them have been due to, you know, friendships, where there are mistrust of somebody else. My defects of character has caused a rift in my own personal friendships, whether it be me being underhanded or undermined, greedy, or even lustful. Or on the other hand, being and then that coming back into your own life, and then feeling, you know, why is this, you know, how come, you know, me and my friend are having I don't understand what's going on between him and I. You know, it's usually behind a relationship, some insecurity. I've experienced those things clean. And then you know, the losing of a loved one, somebody that I cared about overdosed and died, somebody I was in a relationship with, and that was devastating. You know, I brought her to New York, Raymond met her, you know, beautiful young girl, and every so often I think about that and I say, wow, you know, it saddens my heart. You know, how do you deal with that? You know, the death of somebody that you cared about, you know, on a romantic level, somebody emotionally attached to. And then 2 years ago, I had to deal with the death of my mother, you know, and my mom. That was hard. That was probably one of the most difficult things I had to walk through in my recovery. To have that feeling of mom not being here anymore, the person that cheered me on through all of my trials, all my tribulations, prayed for me, even when I was in recovery, insane, out of my mind, you know, because I think we go through periods in recovery where we think we're supposed to have it together. Got a sponsor. I'm actively working steps. I may be sponsoring people. I have a service position. I may be praying regularly, but my defects of character don't care about none of that stuff because they work their way in. You know, I can pray in the morning and be, you know, okay with, you know, my spiritual condition may be pretty strong, and then an obsession hits, and if I don't take the right action, then I'm off to the races and I'm gone. And justification is what happens for me. I can justify and rationalize any behavior if it suits me. And that's why, you know, in the last couple of years, I've made some changes in my life. And I changed home groups after 12 years. I had the same home group for 12 years. I changed home groups. I moved to a group where there's a man that I respect and love, who has a very, very dear place in my heart. It's his home group. And I go out with the guys before the meeting, and we go eat, and then we go up to the meeting, and, you know, everybody's of service of that group. And what was happening in my own home group is there was a lot of apathy, and I have a lot of control issues. You know what I'm saying? And so when my control issues is met with other people's apathy, it's not pretty, you know, for me. I get unmanageable, right? So I fought the good fight for as long as I could, and I understand that my purpose in that group was to serve, and I served good, and I was effective. And I always, there was a big group of people, and when people came from out of town, this is one of when people come from anywhere outside of the greater Hollywood area, I make a point to give them a hug and welcome them. Because I know what it's like to travel. I know what it's like to be outside of my comfort zone. I know what it's like to be at a convention and everybody hugging each other in their own little clique, in their own little friendship circle, and then to stand there feeling alone. Even though I'm amongst my family in Narcotics Anonymous, it takes a little while to get acquainted. My feelings, my emotions, right, and my defects of character will send me to the room and isolate. But what happens is, if someone comes up and welcomes me, or offers me a cup of coffee, or hey, they look at your badge and say, where are you from? And so I know what that feels like. So I have a responsibility to try to do that for others, and I did that really well in my home group because we got a lot of people that came from a lot of different places, and ultimately, it came to a place where I wasn't comfortable anymore, and I feel like it was time to move on. It was time to. I had to surround myself with people that were spiritually mature so that I can grow. Because what happens for me is that when I'm around people that are discontent, and I'm not saying this wrong. Listen, we all suffer a degree of sickness and rate of recovery, and for a long time, people were hanging out with me. And I was content with being unfaithful. I was content with being untrustworthy. I was content with being, controlling. I was content with a lot of things because of my surroundings and the people that I was with. But when you put people in your life that raise the bar for you, there's a higher responsibility on my spirit that calls for me to live a different way. And so I had surrounded myself with men that I respect and I love. They talked about being faithful. They talked about commitment. And all these men had their own individual relationships, working relationships with a higher power. And a working relationship, in my understanding, is when two people communicate, right? Well, I can talk to God, but I also need to listen. If you're in a relationship and you're doing all the talking and no listening, probably not a very healthy relationship, right? Somebody's not being heard, something's not going on, and I was laughing at that. It was like that video, right? You ever see that video with the Spanish kid? Listen, Linda, listen, right? That's how we are, like listen, wait, sponsor, listen, but you don't understand, listen. So, one of the things that I found that I found comfort in, right? We find ourselves in these dark places sometimes with many, many years clean. And so that meant that I wasn't alone, because sometimes what can happen is that, some of us stay clean for a long period of time and people put expectations on us. I put expectations on the old timers when I was new. I would have the audacity to judge them and condemn them and even point the finger at them because they weren't living up to a standard that I thought they should be, because Narcotics Anonymous is supposed to be this, everybody's supposed to come in here and get right. Everybody's supposed to be great, wonderful, loving people. There's a spiritual program. Don't you know you're supposed to be living this way? And it doesn't always work out that way. There's a lot of wonderful things, and I think we all get to what we need to be at different stages, and I think the awakening comes gradually. At least it has for me. With that being said, right, I was reading this, and it says recovery gives us a new chance of life. Sometimes we have to accept that invitation more than once. So that means, my life can be really unmanageable. I could be surviving and not living, and then all of a sudden, something can happen. Somebody could come to a meeting, a service position could open up, and God will make a way, an invitation for me to re-establish my recovery again. Make 30 meetings in 30 days if you can't do 90 and 90. If that seems too far for you, if your life is too full, Jimmy, do 30 and 30. And then so when that popped out, right, invitation, I said to myself, I've seen, our literature talks about an invitation, and it talks about it in the 9th step, and it works how and why. And it says very boldly, our higher power has given us an invitation to live, and we accept it with gratitude. So that's where the invitation came from. God gave me an invitation to live, and it's whether I want to take that invitation and come to the NA party or not, happy, joyous, and free, or I can stay, in begrudgingly resentment, because resentment is something that harbors darkness and hardens my heart, and it separates me from you. It can create a bad place in my spirit for me when I allow resentment to establish itself and grab a hold and hold me in one place for a long time. I come to realize, man, that forgiveness is essential in recovery. I can't go anywhere for any period of time without the spirit of forgiveness in my heart, because I can become very self-righteous and arrogant and then not want to be around any of you, thinking that I'm doing everything wonderful and you're not, and not loving people where they're at, and in the back of the book it talks about love. It's one of the most powerful thing that we have is love. And even though unconditional love may be unattainable, to a certain degree, by a higher power, it is something that I would love to emulate. I would try my best. And being human, I'm going to wander and go off course. But judgment is something I think that was comfortable when I read it, and it talks about here in here a little bit later on. But I want to talk about the bottoms. Right? The bottoms we hit in recovery can be frightening. We go through dark times. We are in pain. It can be hard to reach out and easier to see the differences. But even in the darkness, the process is still going on. When NA members say, don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle, they're not just talking about the first one. That means I should expect miracle after miracle after miracle. That is saying that not one miracle is going to happen, but more miracles are going to happen. That if I just stay put, and if I just allow myself to understand it, sometimes, there's only certain things you can learn in the dark that you can't learn in the light. There's only certain things that are going to happen. I have a friend that says this very boldly. He's from Detroit, Michigan. He says, you're going to meet God in one of your prayers or one of your affairs, but you're going to meet God. And when he said that, it shook me, And I said, okay, what's he talking about? And then as I understood this, there comes times in my life, like when my mother died, and I was left with nothing, I felt empty. God became everything. And that 11th step became very, very vibrant in my life. Like, I'm laying in bed, I can't sleep, I can't eat. I'm mourning my mother. I'm the only child. It was an agonizing pain that you can't describe it to somebody that hasn't been through it. But when you lose somebody that you love like that, somebody that that you just talking to every day, or that they comforted you your whole life, and they're no longer here, it's like, God, I need you. I really need you. And that's what happened for me. And so when that happened, something started to change in my spirit. A new kind of surrender is necessary if we are to stay clean and keep growing. And that surrender right there was necessary for me, because it opened me up to new possibilities. Whereas before I was very, no, this is where it is, it's the way I see it. But I have to remain open-minded as a member of Narcotics Anonymous. Green things grow, ripe things rot. New literature comes out. I'm provoked and challenged by different people. I go to meetings, and it doesn't necessarily mean people with clean time. I've been provoked to think of things that I never thought of before by members that are just coming through the door. Out of the mouths of babes will come wisdom, and very powerful things happen for me. Listening to other addicts share without judging them is the beginning of listening to our own heart without judgment or punishment. That to me says that I'm not alone. Have you listened to somebody without judging them? What they're wearing, how they sound, where they come from, where they got clean, what their social status, what they've done in the past. Some of us right now are a moment of silence in some areas of our life. I've been a moment of silence many times in different areas of my life. And if we can't offer the same love that we offer to the newcomer, right? When a newcomer comes in the room and they relapse, we're supposed to applaud them wholeheartedly. We're supposed to encourage them. We're supposed to fan the flame of desire. We're not supposed to criticize them or tell them that they're not welcome or backbite or talk about them. We don't listen. We don't shoot our wounded, as Eliot says, right? So for members in here and they're suffering with a particular behavior, Jimmy, then who are you to judge them Because a desire to stop using doesn't necessarily mean drugs. They may have a desire to want to stop womanizing, gambling, pornography, whatever's making their life unmanageable. I don't know what it is for you, but it's been those things for me. And so those things in my life, I have a desire to want to stop or quit or stop using them because they've made my life unmanageable. So what do? You have to fight through the criticism. You got to fight through the judgment. I got to understand that, you know what, this language and this literature is mature and it's coming out in a manner in which, at a time which is comforting for me because it means I'm not alone. You know, because I've been on both sides of the coin. You know, I've sat there very arrogant and very judgmental of other people, only to come find myself maybe in a similar situation or considering doing something. You know, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been handed an indecent proposal clean and considered it. I was given one about a year ago, and I'll tell you what I did. I called my sponsor. I called Raymond, you know, and it had to do with some money and had to do with some business stuff and had to do with, and I said to myself, let me call the men in my life that I love and I respect. And my sponsor said to me, what is the friendship worth to you? And the word that it came out, the word that I heard was greed. 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 One thing I know about me is I can never get enough. It doesn't matter. The money's going to go, but my integrity, wow. What about that? What about my ability to carry the message once I, you know, someone asks you to be of service and you want to share about honesty, but yet I know it affects me when I'm not living right, that what happens is it affects my ability to be useful in Narcotics Anonymous. You know, because, and the thing is, I got to fight through my own judgment because judging people say, well, that guy's a hypocrite and that person, she's this and she's that, well, what about me? I've been those things. And so we have to allow each other the ability to love and grow in recovery, and growing pains is something that is going to come and go. And it takes time, to be confronted with choices and to make bad decisions and to recover from those bad decisions. And, sometimes sometimes going the wrong direction can get you to the right place. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but we could be heading in the wrong direction and it'll get us to the right place because of the pain, the suffering, the lack of sleep or the guilt or the shame. Those things are natural in our lives. We're supposed to feel those things. We're not supposed to anchor and wait in them because depression, we don't want depression to turn into despair. But what happens is that I have to move through those things and forgive myself and to be honest with my sponsor and practice abstinence in certain areas of my life or make an admission that's uncomfortable. More importantly, maybe making amends. Try to make it right. At least have the willingness to make it right. Because it doesn't always work out the way that we want it to, right? Sometimes we just have to be willing and God will put us in position and he'll make the time and the person or whatever the situation right, And they may never accept my amends. But I know my heart is in the right place and that is important. And this was deep for me, right? It says, when we are in a crisis, we may try all kinds of escapes and excuses before we resort to the steps. Sound familiar? Wow. We can be intolerant. We can make excuses before we resort to the steps. We can be intolerant, angry, defensive, vengeful, guilty, and resentful, testing the patience and tolerance of those around us. The only way out is through. We must roll up our sleeves, get to work. These struggles often push us into the next phase of our recovery. We can come out stronger and healthier people for the experience if we are willing to do the work. And that's what I said. There's only certain things you can learn in the dark that you can't learn in the light. Pushing you to that next level in your recovery and having the empathy that maybe it's gonna bond you with somebody, down the line that you haven't experienced now, that you have that's been live and well and talked about in NA. And now you have that experience for yourself. And now your sponsees are going to benefit. Maybe somebody in a meeting is going to benefit from that. Maybe my ability to be honest and tell the truth and be, unshameful about something and just put it out there like, yo, this is what happened and this is what I did. I'm not proud of it, but this is what happened and I can't escape it, but I want to make it right. And I don't want to live like that anymore. you know. And you know, these are all behaviors that I'm not talking about drug use. You know, I'm talking about many years, you know, after being clean and dealing with things, being very, very lustful, or being very deceitful, and not want to be honest with people in my life, and being untrustworthy, and you know, and so I had to really make some important decisions for myself and surround myself with people that I respect and love and honor. And you know what? The guys, they don't come over my house anymore like they used to. My house is not, you know, it's not rumbling with people like it used to. They're not coming over and playing poker every Sunday night anymore. Because I put a boundary in I'm tired of being disrespected. I'm tired of not being listened to in my own home, you know, but I was allowing it to happen. You know, because I love my friends. I don't want to be alone. Let them come over. Sometimes, but when you make moves, you make changes, you start, you know, paying attention to what God's trying to say in your life, you know, you spend more time alone, you start losing friendships. You know, and it doesn't mean that I'm better than them. You know, it just means that sometimes, you know, in life, we need to move forward. And hopefully sometimes the people in our lives, they'll either catch up or we can love them where they need to be. You know, I was in a relationship last November. The relationship ended. You know, she had 6.5 years clean. She just out of nowhere said, you know what, I think that, you know, I was in love with the idea of being in love, and I was, you know, taken back by that. That wasn't my experience. That's not what I was feeling. And it was a very healthy relationship. A relationship we made a choice between ourselves that we weren't going to have sex before marriage. We were going to date. We were going to, you know, there was a lot of healthy stuff. And I really, really was sincere in my choices with her. And she decided that she wanted to move on. And I got to tell you, when she said she wanted to move on, it was painful and it was hurtful. But I didn't argue, and I didn't fight with her, and I didn't stalk her, and I didn't go crazy, and I mean, you know, I surrendered quietly, right? For the first time in my life, probably the quietest I've ever surrendered, and just let it go. You know, and the beauty in that is that when things came tough for her, you know, many, many months down the line, I left that door open for her because I didn't condemn her, I didn't criticize her, and I knew that she would probably move on. You know, she's a beautiful girl. You know, she's attractive. Something's going to happen. So you know what I did every morning? I prayed for her happiness. And I prayed that she finds somebody that she can be in love with, that's going to treat her right, you know. And all I could do was ask for the same for myself that I want for her. And that's what I did. And you know what? It saddens me to tell you that she relapsed after 6.5 years clean. You know, maybe God was protecting me. Maybe he didn't want me to be down that path with somebody, you know, already maybe having financial commitments together, maybe even have a marriage intact, and then that person used, and now I'm having to deal with that, and now what do you do? And maybe there's a baby on the way. You know, I don't know. But I was spared that, you know, and so when she asks for help, I help her. And then she runs off, and then she disappears for a little while, and then she calls me again, and I help her, you know, and that's what I'm supposed to do. You know, and you know, so that was painful, you know, but it was something that I had to learn and really, really take to heart, like really pay attention to me in that situation, because I really understand that, you know, if it's God's will for me, there's nothing I can do to manipulate, to keep somebody, or to make them, you know, listen, it talks about fantasy in here. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. My friend Stephanie R. from Connecticut says the amount of fantasy going into the relationship will determine the amount of pain coming out. You know? And that's a very, you know, it talks about fantasy in here, you know, in the relationships portion. And, but this really provoked me, right? It said there are spiritual tourists and spiritual explorers. One plays it safe, and the other will step right out there and try God out. And I was a spiritual explorer, you know, for a period of time. I never really had a problem with the word God or relationship with God. And for many years, I had, you know, I loved the program of Narcotics. And one of the most enticing things for me as a member of Narcotics Anonymous was the right to a God of my own understanding, without any catches, right? We can stand in a circle, so many of us with so many different beliefs in God or not believing in God or whatever it is, and we can stand united regardless of what we believe, and that we can set aside our differences and allow what happens here, you know. And Narcotics Anonymous, we move beyond politics. We move beyond religious separation. You know, it's something very powerful here, you know. When I ask, you know, in my country, I heard Sam going over to Iran. In my country, like when they talk about stuff, like, you know, we think, oh, that's my brother right there. You understand what I'm saying too? And it doesn't matter what our political views are, the country that I live in. Narcotics Anonymous, it moves beyond any boundaries that society puts on us, because as a family, we understand addiction and we understand each other. You know, I was sitting in the Brixton prison this afternoon, man. Keith, thank you for allowing us to come in, man. And we went into the prison, and I sat there with all the guys, and I was in the prison, and I couldn't believe it was on my heart. I just sat there and I said, if Jimmy Kinnon could see this now. Because they used to say, he always used to say, even when NA was just in California, talk about it being a worldwide fellowship. Speak it into existence. Talk about it. And, you know, and that's what happened. That there's actually a Narcotics Anonymous meeting with Narcotics Anonymous literature up on the wall in a prison in England. Are you kidding me? That's powerful. That's a very powerful thing for me to witness and to see and to understand that recovery is very vibrant and, you know, and it's explosive, you know, and that we all have a responsibility to keep this thing afloat, you know, and I'd probably just go back here and end it like this, because I want to give Raymond some time, because I love Raymond. Raymond has been very influential in my life. He's one of the men that have tolerated me. He has put up with me. He has not judged me. As a matter of fact, he's done things to love me, gone out of his way to experience things with me that he didn't care for, but he did it because he knew they were important to me. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that kind. You know that somebody really don't want to do this, but they're doing it because they love you. You know, that's true. That's like true love, you know. And it says love, the spirit of love that we express in NA is the most powerful thing we have. The basic text describes it as the flow of energy from one person to another, and we see this in action when we watch an addict come back to life in the rooms. The hugs we give are instrumental part of our method and our experience. NA is all about love, period. So regardless of defects of character, where I'm at in my recovery, how much I think you should be doing, how much little I'm doing, love is the most important thing. It supersedes everything that we do. It's the primary purpose of why we're here, you know, because as a recovering addict, I receive and give love. As a using addict, I took advantage of people's love. I never gave love back. I was too afraid to open up. I didn't want to do anything to be vulnerable with people, you know, and I was just a taker my entire life. And now I wake up in the morning and I ask myself, how can I make this world a better place? It sounds kind of cheesy, right? But it's true. When I was in that relationship, I woke up every morning and I asked God, how can I make her life better? That for somebody like me, it's very selfish. I came a long way. You know, that's the power of Narcotics Anonymous in these steps and my relationship with God and the men that give me the honor and the responsibility of sponsoring them. I got some good men in my life right now, man. They're texting me even when I'm over, you know, how you doing, Spons? I love you, I'm checking in, I'm doing this, I'm doing good, I'm going to the meeting. They're still checking in with me. They're over there and they're checking in with me over here asking how my trip is going. You know, and to me, that's a beautiful thing. So, you know, they say that listening is an act of love. So I want to thank you guys for loving me.